We'll break down the meaning of everything in this box. So we'll start off with the sanad, and then the actual hadith, and then the grading, and then the reference. And we'll see this word come up time and time again. When it appears in a hadith, is often shorthand for on the authority of. This hadith was narrated according to Abi Hurairah. So why is it that this name that we know as always Abu Hurairah is now Abi Hurairah? So one thing about this word an is that it will make the word after it nasb. Don't worry if you haven't done any kind of grammar before, it doesn't matter. The only thing that you would need to know is that without the an, it would be Abu Hurairah. But because of the an, it's now Abi Hurairah. An Abi Hurairah. And then this is a common phrase that we come across. Radiyallahu anhu. What does radiyallahu anhu mean? So if we're to take the meaning of this phrase as a whole, it means may Allah be pleased with him. And if you break down those individual words, radiya means he was pleased. And who was pleased? Allah was pleased. So we're going to get rid of the he. And who was Allah pleased with? Allah was pleased with him. So you'll notice that even though this is one word, it's actually made up of two components. You have the word an, which we've come across before, haven't we? We've come across it here. So one thing you need to know about this type of word, an, is that it is a harf. And the way we would define a harf is that it does not have a self-contained meaning. And what do I mean by that? I mean that, for example, when I say the word chair, you or I will both be visualizing some sort of sitting equipment, right? When I say apple, we would both be visualizing the same sort of fruit. When I say swimming, we're both visualizing the same sport. However, when I say the word an, we would not be automatically thinking of the same meaning, because a harf does not have a self-contained meaning. So where does it take its meaning from? It takes its meaning from the words around it, which is why even though this word an is the exact same word as this word an, they will not mean the same thing. So we have the word an here, but we're going to translate it as with. And this hu at the end, whenever it's attached to a harfun, we would always translate it as him. So let's recap that again. An means upon the authority of. Abi Hurairah is referring to the companion Abu Hurairah. We won't get too technical as to what nasbun means. It just means, for now, that this wow has turned into a ya. Then we get to the phrase radiyallahu anhu, which generally means may Allah be pleased with him. Now, qala is a past tense verb as well. And this past tense verb means he said. So far we've come across two past tense verbs. We've got radiya, which means he was pleased, and qala, which means he said. And who is the he referring to? The he is referring to Abu Hurairah. So actually we don't need that he. So we can translate all of that so far as on the authority of Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him, who said. And then we're going to come across this new sentence here. And again, we start off with this past tense verb, qala. We said that qala means he said. So let's take this phrase first and then we'll break it down. And this phrase means the messenger of Allah. So how did we create this of in between? What's happened? So to do that, let's start from the beginning and then we'll work our way back to how this of is created. When you search up the word Rasul in the dictionary, you will not find it appear like this. You will find it appear as Rasulun. and it will end in a double dhamma. And one thing to note is that every single noun, every single ismun, another technical word for you, the default state of every ismun is that it will never begin with an alif and a lam, and it will always end with a double dhamma. And if you see any changes to this, whereby an alif and a lam has appeared, or a double dhamma has disappeared, then you know something has happened to cause that change, and your job as a grammarian would be to investigate why. Why did that change happen? So even though this word has two dhammas and this word has one dhamma, they actually mean two very different things. This word with two dhammas means a messenger. How did we get from a messenger to the messenger? The reason is because this phrase is actually something called an idafa. And really what this structure is it's about creating that of in between. So here we can see that this word, it doesn't have an alif and a lam at the beginning, and it doesn't have this tanween at the end. Therefore, this word is incomplete. This word, if it's incomplete, it must mean that it's tied to the word after it. Always, always, always. So you can see that we've tied this word to the word after it. But how can I tie this word back to this word? And what's strange about this ismun? This ismun does not end with a dhamma. The default state of every single word is that it ends with a dhamma. Whether it's one or two, it should end in a dhamma. But it doesn't. It's got a kasra. And whenever you see a kasra, you know that it's tied to the word behind it. So now we've built ourselves a phrase whereby these two words are connected to each other. And this is how we've created ourselves this of. And so this method of removing things and adding things and changing things is called idafa. We'll come across it a lot, so get used to this technical term. And then finally, we come across the dua sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The word salla is a past tense verb meaning he sent blessings. And who is the he sending the blessings? It's Allah. So we can get rid of this he. And Allah sent blessings where? Alayhi. This is one word, but it's actually made up of two components. It's made up of this word ala, which means on, and it's made up of this particle he. We've come across this particle elsewhere. When we first did radiyallahu anhu, right? So this same hu is making a reappearance here. However, the reason why this hu has now become a he is just because it's preceded by a ya. It's just a phonetic thing as opposed to a grammatical reason. And what did we say about this particle hu or he? That any time it is attached to a harfun, we are going to translate it as him. So, sallallahu alayhi means Allah sent blessings on him. Allah sent blessings on him. Wa means and sallama has the same letters as salama or salam, which means peace. So what has Allah sent down? Blessings and peace upon him. So let's put our vocab to one side. So we've collected al-idafa and ismun as part of our technical vocab. The default state of an ismun is that it will always have a tanween, and it will never begin with an alif and a lam. And if it does have an alif and a lam, or it loses its tanween, then we must ask ourselves why. Another rule about the ismun, that end letter should always, the default state of that end letter is a dhamma. And if the end of an ismun has changed from a dhamma into something else, whether it's a kasra or a fatha, then we must ask ourselves why. So let's recap what we've done so far. We've got an Abi Hurairah radiyallahu anhu قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Easy. Let's move on to the actual text of the hadith. The Prophet said, min. Min here means from. And the reason why I said min here means from is because min is a harfun. And we said that a harfun is defined by the fact that it does not have a self-contained meaning. So that means that every time you see the word min, it doesn't automatically translate as from, but here it does. Now let's zoom in on this phrase here. So notice how the endings of all of these words are kasras. And what did we say about kasras? That if an ismun has changed from its default dhamma, then we have to ask ourselves why. So let's go through the word individually as they appear in their default states, and then we'll talk about why that's changed. So husni comes from the word husnun. Husnun is about beauty or goodness. Let's move on to our second word. Our second word is also an ismun, which means that it should also end in a tanween. So Islami should actually be, in its default state, Islamun. And finally we have this third word. This word is also an ismun. It's mar'un. Mar'un means person or man. So we've got our three words. We've got our three isms. We've got husnun, which is about beauty or goodness. We've got islamun, and we've got mar'un. And so the question we should be asking ourselves is, why have these isms changed from their default dhammas? Why have these isms lost their tanweens? Let's zoom in. We've said that there's only two reasons why you will always see something with a kasra. Either it's preceded by a harf, or it's part of an idafa. Let's jog our memories as to what that means. This word husni was once upon a time husnun, but the word husni has lost its tanween and it's lost its alif and a lam, which tells us this word is linked forward to this word. Then we come across this word Islami. This word was once upon a time Islamun. So why has Islami lost its tanween and its alif and a lam? That tells us it's connected to this word in front. Then we come across the word al-mar'i. Al-mar'i is an ismun. It doesn't have a tanween, but it does have an alif and a lam, right? Mar'un has gained an alif and a lam. So it's still an ismun, it doesn't look incomplete. So, will this word also chain forward and attach to this word? No, it doesn't. That chain has stopped here. Now we need to see, are these words connected backwards? And how do we know a word is connected backwards? When we looked at that idafa in Rasulullahi, we said that the word Allah should be Allahu, right? It should be the default dhamma. And it's not. And when we ask ourselves, why is it not this default dhamma? It's because it's connected to the word behind it, right? So now let's do the same thing with the word al-mar'i. Since our chain has stopped here, we'll start off with this chain. So the word al-mar'i it should be al-mar'u. It should have that default dhamma. And since it's got a kasra, either it's preceded by a harf, it's not, which means it must be part of an idafa, which means it's attached backwards. Then we look at the word Islami, and it's lost its default dhamma, which tells us it's attached backwards to the word behind it. And then we look at the word husni. So it's lost its tanween and it's lost its alif and a lam, which means we know it's connected forwards. But why has it lost its default dhamma? Right? Why was it not just a single dhamma? Why has it lost its default dhamma? Why is it also a kasra? We said there's two reasons why something would be a kasra. Either it would be preceded by a harf. And what did we say about the word min? The word min is a harf. So we know now that this kasra is a kasra because the word min is a harf. And so just like the word an, it causes the word after it to be nasb. And so the sign that this word was nasb was that it had lost its waw and turned into a ya. And the sign that this word is nasb is because it's lost its dhamma and it's turned into a kasra. So that means that really we've got both reasons as to why a kasra exists in this phrase. This word is a kasra because of the harf behind it. So does that mean that chain still continues? No. Our chain begins at this word. Our idafa begins at this word. We know that this word looks incomplete because it doesn't have an alif and a lam at the beginning. It doesn't have a tanween at the end, which is why it's jumped to this word. This word also looked incomplete because it didn't have an alif and a lam at the beginning. It didn't have a tanween at the end, which is why it jumped. It's connected to the word in front. This word does have an alif and a lam at the beginning. So we know that the chain has stopped here. And where does this chain begin? Again, we started off at husni, didn't we? So this word, and just to confirm that this is where the chain begins and ends, we can see that this kasra shows us it's connected to the word behind it, which has a kasra which tells us that this word is connected to the word behind it. And this word is connected to the word behind it, but for a different reason. Not because it's part of an idafa, but because it's been preceded by a harf. Yeah? So we have this chain. And what does idafa do? It creates ofs in between these words. So how would we translate it? If we connect it back to the word from, we can translate it as from the beauty of the Islam of man is whatever this says. So let's focus on that remaining part. تركه ما لا يعنيه. This word is actually made up of two parts. We've got the word terkun and then we've got the word hu. So terkun in its original default state is, remember, we're going to bring that double dhamma back. Terkun is the concept of leaving you behind. Yeah? And then we've come across this word hu before. We said that anytime you have the word hu and it's attached to a harfun, we're going to translate it as him. But anytime you have the word hu and it's attached to an ismun, we are going to translate it as his. Ma means what. So now we would translate so far as his leaving what, and then this phrase here. So let's take this phrase and break it down by focusing on this middle bit here first. So even though it's one word, it's actually made up of two parts. Yeah, we've come across this hu before. We said that hu and he are the same. What's the only difference? That the he should actually be a hu. So here it should be يعنيه, which sounds clunky. So because of that we're going to say يعنيه. Yeah. So what does يعنيه means? So we've got the word he, which means him, anytime it's attached to a verb. And what does this verb mean? This verb, يعني, has the letters a, na, ya. And where have you come across these a, na, ya letters before? Sometimes little girls are called inaya, right? Or as we say in English, inaya. And the name is about care or concern, right? So we would translate it as it concerns. It concerns who? It concerns him. So far, when we've done verbs, they've always been past tense verbs. This is our first present tense verb. And one of the clues that it's a present tense verb is that it begins with that letter ya. So we have this word, يعنيه, meaning it concerns him. However, whenever you have a verb and it begins with this la, it negates that verb. So rather than saying it concerns him, we say it does not concern him. So now let's check that all over again and see what we can take from that. Min, from. The beauty of the Islam of man is. And where is that is? In Arabic, there's no such thing as is. We just have to slot it in where appropriate. So, from the beauty or from the perfection of the Islam of man is his leaving what does not concern him. So now we've got عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه. Upon the authority of Abi Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him, who said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, from the beauty of the Islam of man is his leaving what does not concern him. Okay, now let's look at the grading. Hadithun Hasanun. Okay, so hadith is kind of self-explanatory. However, what you will notice about hadith is that because it's an ismun, we can identify it by its tanween. And now let's move on to Hasan. Where have we come across Hasan before? In this idea of husni. We have the letters of hasana, hasana. So that idea of goodness or beauty is still maintained here. We would translate this as a good hadith. And this is an adjective of this word. So in English, adjectives come before the noun it's describing. In Arabic, adjectives come after the noun they're describing. And how do we know this is an adjective of this word? Because it will follow this word in certain characteristics. There are 4 characteristics, but really the one characteristic I want to point out is this tanween. The described noun has a tanween, so its adjective will have a tanween. What do we mean by good? This is a technical term for how we grade the authenticity or reliability of a hadith, right? So the very best hadith will be categorized as sahih or authentic. And then slightly further down would be a hasan hadith, like the one we have now. And then even further down would be a da'if hadith. A da'if hadith. Da'if means weak. So a hadithun da'ifun would be a weak hadith. And if we were to draw a distinction, really that distinction would be here. Because we can make legal rulings based on these two hadiths. Whereas this hadith is more so, while it's still a hadith, it's still attributed to the Prophet, because it just doesn't meet certain metrics, we can only use it as kind of guidelines for our personal self. And then there are certain fabricated hadiths that don't even fall into this criteria, because a fabricated hadith may as well not exist in the first place. And then finally we come to the narrators. So, rawahu. Rawahu is actually one word made up of two parts. We've come across this particle hu before in anhu and alayhi. So it's the same hu here. Rawa is a verb. Rawa is a past tense verb meaning he narrated or he reported. Whenever hu is attached to a verb, it will be translated as him. Arabic doesn't have a word for it. And so whenever you want to use the word it, we're going to, because a word doesn't exist, we borrow the pronoun him or her. So really, we would translate this not as he narrated him, but he narrated it. And who is the he being referred to here? The he being referred to here are At-Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah, who are two of the 6 major hadith compilers. So we have Rawahu At-Tirmidhi, meaning At-Tirmidhi narrated it, and then Ibn Majah narrated it as well. And so raqam means number, raqam means, and this is the number hadith. So hadithun hasanun, rawahu at-Tirmidhi, wa, and Ibn Majah. So really, when we're looking up at that entire box, we can break the lines in such a way that they're memorable. Yeah. An Abi Hurairah radiyallahu anhu قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه. And what that means is, upon the authority of Abi Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him, who said, the Messenger of Allah, may Allah send blessings and peace upon him, said, from the beauty of the Islam of man is his leaving what does not concern him. And the grading of that hadith is hadithun hasanun, and it's narrated by At-Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah. Rawahu At-Tirmidhi wa Ibn Majah.